You're listening to the Simplify AI podcast, making AI easy to understand, helping you save time and work smarter.
Welcome to Simplify AI. This is the podcast that breaks down the world of artificial intelligence into simple, relatable insights that anyone can understand. We are your hosts. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Rebecca Bradley.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good. So in this episode, we're going to talk about questions. It's a Q&A episode. And we've had a really nice question come in. And actually, this might take us the entire episode to discuss because it's going to spark off some discussion.
I think so. It is a really simple but a really good question. And the reason that I wanted to cover questions in an episode early on is because we really don't know what we don't know, even us as hosts of this podcast. But I think people's questions will spark questions in other people as well, which will be really interesting for this because we're kind of giving the information that we think is simplified, but because we know it, what if there's another layer underneath of stuff that we don't know what we don't know? So I'm really interested in questions that people have after they've listened to the first episodes, or maybe this is the first episode that you've listened to. With a subject like this, it can be a little bit intimidating because it's sort of seen as being tech-based. We want to make it as accessible as possible, that you can ask any question. Nothing is too silly here. I will keep banging on about this in every episode because I feel really passionately about it. Your question might spark something in someone else, or it might allow someone else to learn more about this because it's opened that pathway up for them.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions at all and you're listening on Spotify, you can comment on the episode and drop us a question and we can discuss it in a future episode. This is a voice note that's been sent to us, so I'm going to play that, this question, and then we'll talk about it.
What do you think the plan is for social media and AI? Because already I see comments on Facebook meta posts, people saying, oh, they'll see something that's obviously AI, and someone will say, oh, I don't want to watch AI. I want to see real stuff.
So that's really interesting because we're starting to see that, aren't we, now with AI generated content on social media, and people are saying, I don't want to see AI stuff.
Yeah, and you can look at it from two different angles, really, can't you? Because you can think about the visual stuff, which is what that question is about, and we'll come to that. But you can also think about text-based AI generated stuff. chatgpt generated posts, and how glaringly obvious those are when we're looking through and scrolling through. They just jump out at me, maybe because I'm a little bit more attuned to it. There are certain things that I can tell are ChatGPT generated, and I think we have a different reaction to it. So going back to that question, I would kind of ask a question back, which is, what is your resistance to it? If there is resistance to it, what is that resistance? If it's because something looks absolutely unreasonably, that would not be something that happened, as in it's not real, that's kind of totally understandable that you're not going to want to be seeing that. Some of the videos that are so sort of crazy and surreal that they couldn't be real, but that's also really obvious that they're not real. What about the ones that are more subtle, where you can't tell? I guarantee you will see a post today and not realise it's AI that will be AI, because it's going to depend on the skills of the person creating that output as to whether or not it looks real or doesn't look real. So this is like a question with 100 different answers and 100 different layers to it.
Do you think that people feel like they're being deceived when they're on social media and they see something and they think, oh, it's real or something, and then they see in the comments loads of people saying it's AI? Like, people are just, do you think that people will have trust issues with these platforms, these social media things? Do you think they'll become more discerning of what they're looking at? or do you think that they will just not be able to tell the difference in the future?
I think eventually we'll get to the point where you won't be able to tell the difference. But for now, that question in itself is interesting, because how do you tell the difference, right? One person is going to tell the difference in a completely different way than someone else is. You know,
Mm,
for instance, you can just think about critical thinking skills around this that don't just apply to AI, they just apply to any content on the internet. Some people will just read that and wholesale believe it because it's written. It will depend on who the person is that's written it, you know, what kind of authority they've got, and they'll just believe it. And then there are other people that will be the opposite of that, who will disbelieve everything that they see. And then you've got people sat in the middle who are like, okay, so let me do a little bit of due diligence just quickly in my head around this. Who's saying this? What's driving them? What's the objective behind it? So it's not easy to answer that, because it depends on the person looking at the content, what they're thinking about it, what their previous experience of AI is, because their knowledge of AI is going to have a big impact on this, right? If they don't know what they don't know, which is what we were talking about at the beginning, if you don't know what you don't know, you're not going to question it, because you're just going to see it and believe it. Again, unless it's something that is crazy, that you blatantly, your brain is telling you that's not real.
mm,
But then even when I think about that, and I think about seeing things that aren't real and knowing they're not real, the disclosure part of it is what's important. So by that I mean, if you're seeing something that is fantastical and it's tagged as AI, why would you not be able to enjoy that and think, wow, look at what's been created here? This is
mm.
amazing. But there's that honesty in having the tag in some way, which is probably what we'll move to, I would imagine, on social media, that it will have to be disclosed, or it will automatically be detected that it's AI generated. So I think there's that to consider as well. And what your personal views are, that's going to have a massive difference on your lens of looking at it and thinking whether you don't want to see it or you do want to see it.
Because there's already, there was before the chat GPTs and all of that came along, there was already a lot of content on the internet, but now it's getting even easier to create content and just saturate our feeds with stuff, because people can create it en masse and schedule it en masse. And it's just sometimes, if I'm scrolling through reels or whatever, you can tell the sort of AI generated reels, and you end up sort of going, okay, I know that's it. Like, some stuff you can enjoy, but some stuff I want to just not see the AI, like
Hmm.
the stuff that you see everywhere that is just bulk created. So it's kind of you know bulking out a lot of those feeds with just kind of rubbish content, lazy content, you know. And I think that platforms in general are making it even easier for people to do this, right? So like LinkedIn, if you write a post, it says start with AI. You know,
Hmm.
it's prompting people to use the AI systems to write their posts for them. So I think I don't know if those kinds of posts would be flagged, like written posts like that in future, a disclosure, but I guess videos definitely would have to be, because they're more, I mean, they're both believable, but would you say one is more severe than the other for like disclosure? Because if someone uses a text, if someone goes on LinkedIn and uses start with AI and then they modify it, it's not solely AI created, is it?
No, and I think this is where there's an important distinction, you know, and we talk about this a lot, that it's augmenting what you're doing. So if you're using it as, you know, Microsoft has stolen the greatest explanation of it being a co-pilot, because obviously that's the name of their LLM. But if you see it as a co-pilot and a helper and a tool, and you're using it with your own skills, your own opinion, your own knowledge, then you're creating something unique, and you're creating something, you know, you're co-creating it together, and that can be, you know, just as amazing as an original thought or an original post, or it could be that it's your original thought and post, but you're using it to polish it a little bit. And I think that's completely different than someone totally creating a post. I mean, it's like the early days of the internet and not so early days of the internet of just spam posts where you and they're really easy to see and to tell. And for me, and I know for you, if I was looking through LinkedIn or Instagram, I can spot an AI generated text post really easily by several different factors. And we have conversations about this a lot, don't we? Where I'll be like, "Did you use ChatGPT for that?" Because there are, I can just spot it because I've been using it for over 2 years. I can see those patterns, but those patterns will change over time as the reasoning models get cleverer. That's going to be probably harder to detect as well. But it is that argument that it's only what you get out is only as good as what you put in. So if you're putting in a really basic query, write me a post on X, I don't mean Twitter, X subject, then that's going to come out pretty spammy and nondescript. Whereas if you're creating an input that is really data rich, you're giving it examples, you're nuancing what you're asking for in the output that comes out of it. You're putting in negative prompting where you're saying don't include certain things. What comes out of that is going to be more of an original thought that you've co-created than just putting a basic query in. And I think some of the formatting of posts is really, really evident in terms of what's AI generated.
Yeah,
Emojis is a big, big, big red flag for me.
emojis, especially when they're used as like bullet points, especially, like emoji point, or the overuse of emojis, especially when you're using something for social media. The other thing that I went down a bit of a rabbit hole this morning because I noticed in like AI posts, they use that long dash with no spaces. So it led me down a massive rabbit hole today to find out because that's a massive telltale sign that someone's used AI to create a text post. And I wondered what it was and why they're using it. So I went down this rabbit hole and I found out it's called an M dash, an EM dash, and it's a slightly longer dash that people were debating. Again, I was back on LinkedIn on a post and people were debating why people like myself were saying that that is a telltale sign of AI. And apparently it's used basically the same as a semicolon or just an ordinary dash. It's just to create a pause. And people have been using that for years. Like it's just all part of the English language of using that to create a pause. But the debate was on this post of people can still use that. They use it all the time. And my argument, in my opinion, is that we don't use that EM dash. I've never used that EM dash, not on purpose. Like Microsoft, if you're using Microsoft Word and you type in a word and then space and then a dash and then a space and carry on writing, it will actually change it to an EM dash, which is really interesting. So Microsoft Word wants you to use EM dashes, but still there's spaces before and after the dash, and
Yeah.
ChatGPT don't do that. They just
No. So
condense
that's
it.
really interesting that you've just said that. So I've just learned something. So when I see that long dash, I assumed that it was an American version of a bracket or something else. And I was thinking, oh, this is one of those things where it's not anglicizing the language enough, like it'll put Z's in instead of S's, which is really obvious. So that's really interesting that you've said that. To me, it's like a massive tell that it's AI generated because I wouldn't type like that naturally. And actually, how you've just explained it, that sounds like a comma to me. If it's a pause, that's what a
Yeah,
comma is for. Whereas
yeah.
I was kind of seeing it as a bracket. So that's really interesting. And I wonder, so you went on down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
How is that even like a thing? Why is that used?
Um, why the LLM's using it?
Yeah.
Well, the arguments were on this post that it was just that must be how they're trained. but that's not how we like. As I say, I've never really used them or seen them
No.
used, so I don't know where that data is coming from for them to be trained on how to use them. Because actually,
Mm.
what I wanted to do was revise some of my prompting to not use those so much.
Yeah.
Like, because I always find myself changing it,
Yeah. And you
as
have to
I'm
go back
writing
and
and
edit it
tweaking it.
out. Yeah.
Exactly. So now I'm going to try, don't use any M dashes,
Ah.
use commas, try and make it more like my language, because um, we don't use those. I've never used one myself, and it's actually harder to get it on the keyboard. Like if you're on a Mac, you have to
Yeah.
press like Option and then the dash. If you're on a Windows computer, it's even more complicated, I think, to get that shortcut. So the argument is that these people were saying we've been using these for ages, writers or whatever, and then obviously the comments were saying, but you don't use, like, people don't use them, and even if they
No.
did, they would
It's
put a
not something
space.
I've ever used. So seeing it would be a red flag. And I would want to negative prompt that out. But I was trying to negative prompt that out by saying use UK British English spelling only, thinking that that's what it was. So
Right.
there you go. That is the brilliance of asking a question, because then you have that discussion and you learn stuff about it all the time. I mean, I would imagine the training data that the LLMs are trained on, not to get too technical here, but LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT and Claude and Copilot, are trained on huge data sets of writing. Um, that would then lead you to believe that there must be lots of M dashes within that. And I wonder whether this does come back down to a UK US difference, that maybe in US and other countries writing, they do use the M dash as more of a standard. And like you've said about the keyboard, maybe the long dash, the M dash, is a easier one to find on a non-UK keyboard. I mean, please tell us, anyone listening,
Yeah,
your
correct us.
experiences of M dashes as well. But the bottom line here is there are tells, and that's one of them.
Yeah,
That is
that's
definitely one of them. That is not a natural way to write. I think emojis have become so prolific in AI generated posts is because there was a stage where it was being taught that you should put emojis in your social media posts. So if there was lots of data that it was trained on that was showing that that was the thing to teach, that that was the best practice, the standard practice, and there was a lot of posts in the data it was trained on that had emojis in it, that's why we're resulting with that now. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? That if we're if we're saying use them more, the LLM is picking that up and doing it. So one way then to sort of stand out is to say, don't use emojis.
yeah, 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 exactly. Um, I don't think there are any other, without going really into it, there are other obvious tell signs other than those two for me.
Oh, there's
You,
tons.
but
There's
you've
tons.
got
Yeah.
you've got the experience to
Yeah.
spot patterns and things like that. And yeah, you've been exposed to it for a lot longer. So
I think there's
um,
the big ones that, jump out at you like emojis. There's certain words, there's even social
spelling.
media posts going around about what are the words that you can easily spot that something's AI generated. I mean, my worst one is dive. That's so, I mean, it's ruined that word for the English language that you can't use it now. Because even if you were using it naturally, it would still smack of AI. And the other one is foster. Now, I now hate those words and won't use them at all because they are so obvious. And there are things that you can do to kind of like make sure that you're not using that. But ultimately, those tales are, if you know them, you can't unknow them. And again,
Mm.
this is about at what stage of your kind of awareness are you? Because if you're not aware of those things, it's not going to bother you. You're just going to read it and think that's actually very formal language. It's not very conversational, is it? We don't all walk around saying, I'm going to dive into this topic and foster your trust. But other than that, you probably wouldn't realise. So I guess that's down to how long you've been using it, and once you notice something, you can't unnotice it.
Mm, Absolutely. Anyway, I hope that's been insightful. It's been really interesting. Thank you for sending in the question. If anyone has any other questions, as we've said, please comment down below, and we can talk about it in a future episode. Is there anything
And I
else you wanted
think,
to bring up?
yeah, with those questions, you see how we started off with a voice note and you ended up talking about M dashes. I just think it's a great way for people to feel more comfortable asking those things that they don't understand. And actually, as you can see, we learn as we go through those questions as well.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we'll leave it there for this week. Thank you, everyone, for watching and for listening. See you later.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Simplify AI podcast, making AI easy to understand, helping you save time and work smarter. To learn more about AI and take our online courses, visit learnai.training.